This is a big story, the Caitlyn Jenner 2-year anniversary special with Diane Sawyer. I'm amazed that no one else is talking about a few things in here that just giant loud whistles and sirens in this going off, alarm bells. I think that there's a strong case to be made that the modern transgender movement is fascism, that these are little tranny fascists, and I mean it. I mean that they are fascists because you cannot ask questions, you will do as we say. Watching this special really made me aware of just how much of a divide there is between media and not only the rest of the country, but the rest of the world.
She writes, after much deliberation, I had the final surgery in 2017. The surgery was a success, and I feel not only wonderful, but liberated. So all of you can stop staring.
But I wasn't less of a woman the day before I had the surgery than I was the day after I had the surgery.
Which begs the question, why do the surgery? I mean, I watched him going, is it me? I was just as much of a woman who sounded like the Joker from the Batman comics before the surgery. Then why do it? Because I felt liberated. How did you feel liberated if you were already a woman?
Then she issues a kind of social warning, saying this is a topic only a transgender person can bring up, and the rest of us should never ask.
You know,
So
and
how
I would make a suggestion to all people out there, don't ask the question. It's not an appropriate question to ask.
I guess it's different, don't ask, don't tell. It's never appropriate to ask the question. How about your doctor? How about your DMV? How about the fertility clinic? How about when I go and purchase a firearm? They say, is this the right address? Yes. Did you check the right sex box along with non-Latino? That seems a little racist, but yes. True. That's the first question a doctor has to ask. Especially when we're dealing with healthcare, right? When we're dealing with subsidizing other people's healthcare, it's never appropriate to ask. Sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it's appropriate for doctors. Sometimes it's appropriate for identification. Sometimes it's appropriate for concerned parents when it comes to modesty or maybe concern. It's like, listen, I don't hate you, but I think it's kind of appropriate. You're going to be showering with my daughter. Do you have a dick? She issues a stern warning. You should never ask, and only transgenders can bring it up. Isn't that social justice warriorism to a T?
Yep.
They just assume we're all on, and if you're not on, it's because you're intolerant. Case in point, like, they want you to act, well, yeah, this is sensible parenting.
My kid at 3 said, everyone thinks I'm a girl and I'm not. And then I said, however you feel is fine. And then Penelope said, no, I don't feel like a boy, Mama. I am a boy. That's as clear as it gets.
Well, that settles it. At 3? Really? I'm a boy. Really? Yes. Also, I want to put my hand in the stove. I suppose. They're 3 years old, and they act as though and everyone's sitting there crying like, yes, yes, as though people aren't watching this from home going, no, right? But you're not buying that shit, are you? Like, they want to act as though we're all sitting there just saying, oh, of course. I think this kind of a parent, more parents are turning their children transgender. I think there are some people who definitely have some kind of an inclination where you're sitting there and it's really hard to get them off target. But I think there are probably more kids who say, I want to be a boy. And this is the kid who just wiped his boogers on the couch and you're letting him make decisions regarding his permanent biology. It's your job to keep your kids on the straight and narrow until they're adults. But when you veer off by the time they're 3 because of some offhanded statement, I think it's borderline child abuse. And then they point to this California school superintendent, which this is just great to me because the super tolerant left don't realize that they're not intolerant enough in this special because they praise this California superintendent for him finding common ground.
His schools have nearly 10,000 students. A few years ago, after parents and teachers decided to talk together, the school now has some gender-neutral bathrooms, which he says are freely used by all kids.
Except that's also hate speech. That's not enough. There are states where they want to force businesses to, you can't have gender-neutral bathrooms.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they say, well, we're going to open a gender-neutral bathroom. You can't. That's still hate speech. We should be allowed to use any bathroom we want. We've tried to find common ground with the gender-neutral bathrooms. It's not been allowed. It's not been accepted. So Diane Sawyer and the people at ABC don't even realize this is the new frontier for civil rights. They don't want unisex. They don't want gender-neutral bathrooms. We even ran into it at the Intersectional Feminist Film Festival.
Last year we had completely just gender-neutral bathrooms, and we actually consulted with the trans community, and they said actually to protect feminine-identifying people and trans women, they would prefer to have feminine-identified, masculine-identified, and then also a gender-neutral restroom. So we made that change this year.
Okay, so you have all three.
So in other words, you have bathrooms.
Yeah.
Here's something else that they brought up, which I think is important to touch on because it brings us into a bigger discussion that is often misleading. Let's watch this.
And here's an interesting finding. If you have one identical twin who's transgender, there is a 39% probability the other will be too, signaling something is genetic.
Or signaling you're a parent when the one twin says, I want to be a boy. You say, fine. And the other says, me too. Seriously, it doesn't take that into account. It doesn't take parenting into account. The point is, if one twin at 3 says, I'm a boy, and you accept it, well, of course the other one's going to push the boundaries. Here's something else that's really important because this has served as the foundation for the argument for a lot of transgenders for decades. I think the original study was 75, somewhere in the 70s. It's called the Gender Fluidity Study by Dr. John Money. And this was one where he raised twin boys. He raised one as a boy and he raised one as a girl. And the idea here, if you go to the study, they talk about how they were raised differently, how they actually had different sexualities, different orientations, how one clearly was born this way. And it was considered to be a resounding success, that this kind of identified that there was something different, genetic, with gender dysphoria. And this has been cited for a very long time. As a matter of fact, if you search transgender twins or if you search gender fluid study, the first several pages that show up are all medical journals that have published this and have praised Dr. Money. The twin who transitioned was actually suicidal at 13 years old, what they don't tell you, and died of a drug overdose. The other twin, the one who was the brother, committed suicide a year later at 38 years old. And the guy who performed this, actually, Dr. Money, was not against, he made cases for pedophilia and molested many of his patients, to the point where there were many child patients who didn't want to return to him. Now, this is not new news. It's only been newly brought to light thanks to new media. And this is one of the most cited studies to undergird the transgender argument, when in fact it proves the exact opposite. It's sad. It's sad, especially when we know the suicide rate. We know the suicide rate is horrible with transgender people, and we know it doesn't get better after the surgery. And there are several studies that show. There's a Swedish study, the famous study. There's also a Canadian study. They're 18 to 19 times more likely than the general population to kill themselves. So once they're transgender, there's no going, the suicide rate is still 40-something%. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
So if you want to save lives, if your goal is just to save lives, and you want to be on the happy trains, it's about personal happiness. The fact is, if you go down that path, you put that kid on the path at 3 years old, transgender, you say, we're going to go along with this, 41% likelihood that kid tries to kill himself. You've created that path. Doesn't matter if you think they're happier and they seem really unhappy at 3 or 4 years old. Doesn't matter if you give them their first pump of estrogen at 9 because they really, really want it. Once you go down that path, they're 18 times more likely to kill themselves. So let's be less concerned about, they say in this special, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I don't want my baby to kill themselves. Okay, I don't think your kid is going to kill themselves because another parent doesn't want a dong in their lady's bathroom. Your kid is going to attempt suicide statistically 19 times, 18 times more likelihood because you've allowed what appears to be a very serious psychiatric condition to go unchecked. And the end game is the same. I was sitting there watching this at home going, they assume that we're not laughing our ass off at statements like this.
And tonight, the Jenner children have sent word they prefer to stay private, instead giving us a statement. We love our father and have deep admiration for her bravery. Every family has unique milestones, but we can honestly say...
They just say it as though that's just common language to everyone else. From cave people clobbering women with clubs and dragging them back into their hut, Dad has been he. Okay? Okay? They're so out of touch in New York and DC and LA, they don't even realize that people are watching this laughing like we are. And that's the vast majority of the country. Case in point, there was this video.
पर फिर भी उन्होंने हमेशा मेरा ख्याल रखा है। सिविक्स बुक में तो लिखा है कि सबके लिए बेसिक राइट सेम होते हैं। फिर मम्मी को क्यों नहीं?
He doesn't even know how to stick his tongue out right.
The child looks very confused.
Yeah, the
there,
child
like,
looks very
what
confused.
happened here?
Most Americans are watching this thinking that it is the sideshow that it is.
Hey, if you like this clip, it's taken from the full daily show available exclusively at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. That's for Mug Club members because we can't be dependent here on the Google YouTube overlords. Subscribe there. We have a daily show, full hour every day. If you don't, well, there's no saving you.